When we have a tough day and have a hard day and it's stressful, where do we go to relax? Where do we go to escape? We crawl into the best place we love, which is our bed. They went into the foster care program, and this family were taking them on, but they only had one bed. And the judge gave the family 24 hours to get a bed, or else they had to split these two kids up. There are 3,000 kids in your town that are sleeping on the floor.
Mm.
The content presented in this podcast and YouTube show is for informational and entertainment purposes only. It is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the guidance of your physician or other qualified healthcare provider with any questions you may have regarding your health or a medical condition. Never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking it because of something you have heard or seen on this show. If you think you may have a medical emergency, call your doctor or emergency services immediately. The host, guest, and producers of this show are not responsible for any adverse effects resulting from your use of or reliance on any information presented.
Andrea, can you hear us?
Many years ago, I died for 26 seconds. There are so many people in this world that have experienced life events that have led to their sole purpose. Wake Up Your Soul with Andrea will bring you these significant life events that demonstrate how to use those moments for guidance and life purpose. These are our stories. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Wake Up Your Soul with Andrea Lynn. Today's guest is Luke Mickelson, and he's here to talk to us about how he founded his company, Sleep in Heavenly Peace. Let's welcome Luke. Hi.
Hello.
How are you?
Great, great. We finally made it.
Yes, it's taken some time, but I kept trying, you kept trying, and here we are.
Yeah. If your listeners knew what we had to go through, there was forces that were
Yeah.
challenging us, but we made it.
Yeah, it must be meant to be. So I was just asking you about your company, Sleep in Heavenly Peace, and I was asking you about how you came to knowing that kids needed beds
Yeah.
because as we dive into this, listeners, you're going to understand that Luke started a company that gives beds to children that are in need of a bed. But I was asking him, how did you even come to find this that kids were in such a need?
Yeah. Well, first of all, thanks for having me on. Our program that I started in my garage 14 years ago, 2012, is something that most people, even today, have no idea is a problem. And be able to come on podcasts and share that message and share the awareness about child bedlessness. I mean, it's not even a real word, but it's real.
Yeah.
So thank you for having me on. Yeah. In 2012, first of all, let me tell you a little bit about myself. I'm a farm kid from Ida. And that's about the best I could express myself. I grew up in a small town. And the beautiful thing about a small town and the terrible thing about a small town is the same thing. You know everybody and they know you. But the benefit of that, I think, is living in a small town is you learn you care about everybody because you know everybody so well, right? So you have this
Yeah.
instant bond and you just grew up thinking everybody was the same way. And so I think I look back at that thinking because of that, how I grew up and my mom being a single mom with 5 kids, I just really appreciated the help I got from people. And because we're such a small town, you knew it. And so you wanted to help other people and give back. And I think that's where my internal character of wanting to help and enjoying service came from, which really played a big role in 2012 for me. Because at the time, I had a good job. I was vice president of my company, and me and my brother were going to buy it and just set that way. And I was coaching football and doing all the things that I wanted to do, hunting and fishing. On paper, I think a lot of people would kill to have that kind of life. But
Yeah.
for me personally, I just wasn't really satisfied with not necessarily who I was, but what I was doing in life.
Mhm.
Again, great on paper, but this just hole was in my heart trying to figure out what it is I'm supposed to do in this. I was going through a faith crisis. I was going through kind of an identity crisis in a way.
Can you talk about that more? Because I think that's something a lot of us begin to struggle with as we start getting older and we start realizing that
our lives here on earth are not forever, and you
Right.
start to kind of have this feeling like, maybe I should be doing something meaningful with my life.
That's a great way I don't know where it comes from, and that makes just
Yeah,
as sense as anything. You're getting on in age and death becomes more of a reality
it
maybe,
does.
or
Yeah.
I think for me anyways, I just know that I was my life was set, right? And I think I realized the value of what I was valuing really wasn't much. The number of zeros behind my paycheck. Probably cared more about that. And I actually measured my success in life on the money I made. Maybe because that's what I was taught. I don't know. We grew up poor, so money, and my mom would always say, "You better get a college and you better get a good job and blah blah. That's how you get successful." And so I think internally I was just taught that success comes from the amount of money you make, and I think that changes when you get older. I think for me anyways, I started realizing, okay, look, when I'm dead, none of this is going to be around, nor does it matter. Number one, and number two, then you ask, well, what does matter? Like, what is important to you? What is important in life? What do you want to leave or be known for? Well, number one, I wasn't going to be the richest guy in the world, so that didn't matter.
That's off the table.
We'll take that one off. But I really wanted everybody to feel like, hey, man, Luke was always the guy that would help, always a guy that would show up and be there for you. Because I had a lot of people that were there for me. And I think that really ate at me,
Mm.
trying to figure out what that was. And then going through a faith crisis, which was probably a big part of it. I grew up in a very strict religion, and I was very, very dedicated. I served 2 years of my life doing that religion and lived and breathed it, and I always felt like I was very faithful, very spiritual guy, and I still feel that way. But when you go through a faith crisis, I think you question yourself a lot, or being led by the devil, or, I don't know, right?
Yeah.
You have these questions, and I remember at the time I was serving in my church as what was called a young men's president. So basically, I was responsible for the spiritual growth of the boys, ages about 12 to 17,
Mhm.
but also the activity arm, like through the week. On Wednesdays, we'd have an activity. And the activity at the time, we took on Boy Scouts, is what it was. So basically, I was the leader of the Boy Scouts, and I loved it. I was the coach. I coached all these kids growing up, and we just really fit together. And I like working with kids and stuff. So I felt really satisfied in that particular position. But when it came to like being a spiritual guide, if you will, for them, I just viewed things differently. I valued people's who they were authentically and who they were honestly with themselves, rather than maybe what God they believed in. I don't know. It's hard to explain, but I know it really ate at me, and I felt like I was a good dude. Here I was teaching these kids lifelong lessons in sports, and now hopefully lifelong lessons in religion and service. And that's where I really spent most of my time, is in service. So when I'm sitting in this meeting, right? Just a normal meeting with all the other church leaders, and we were talking about activities that were going on in the community. We were talking about people that the church was helping at the time, and one particular family came up, and it kind of caught me by surprise because being from a small town, I rode my bike everywhere growing up. I knew every inch of that town, or at least I thought I did,
Yeah.
because this family lived in an apartment complex that I didn't even know existed.
Mhm.
So when they talked about it, I was like, "Wait a minute, where is this place?" It kind of caught my ear. Well, the church was helping him out with a lot of stuff. She was a local school bus driver, and the dad suffered from some mental health issues, so he couldn't really hold a job, and they were just struggling. Well, come to find out, one of the leaders had showed up to the house bringing them something, and they noticed the kids didn't have any beds. And so the leader talked about how the kids don't have any beds. And I said, wait a minute, it just caught me really strongly. I'm like, wait a minute, did you say they don't have any beds? Like they've got mattresses to sleep on, right? And she said, no, they're literally sleeping on the floor with blankets.
Wow.
And, Andrea, it just hit me. I just was like, I thought about my own kids. I had a couple of kids at the time, and not at the time, I still have them, by the way. That sounded funny.
I was thinking the same thing. I was like, at the time.
Uh, they're still with me, everybody. Don't worry. I got thinking, what would it be like for them to sleep on the floor day in and day out, and what school life would. It just really was it painted a bad picture in my mind.
Mhm.
And then the other thought came to me is like, listen, if you're a leader over any teenage boy nowadays, right? Finding an activity that doesn't involve a screen or some sort of game, computer game, is tough to do, especially if
Yeah.
you're going to enjoy it, right? So I thought, oh, here's a great opportunity that I could get an Xbox controller out of these boys' hands,
Yeah.
put a drill and a sander in it and teach them something. And so that's what I did. Went home that night and my daughter had a bunk bed. So I went and I measured the bunk bed and figured out how to build one because I had never built furniture before in my
Yeah.
life. We were going to figure it out. And so the boys came to my house that week and we started building this bed. It took 3 nights, but we finished this complete bunk bed for this family. And it filled that hole in my heart faster than anything. I just, for whatever reason, the activity with the boys was fun. The the cause it was going to was worthwhile to me. It just was a great feeling.
Mhm.
But then the time came to deliver the bed, and the word kind of got out in the congregation of what we were doing.
Mhm.
And then, so all of a sudden, the boys' parents and members of the ward showed up. I mean, all these people showed up to go on this delivery, and we can't send 20 people over to this small little apartment. So
Yeah.
I stayed back to clean my garage, and I didn't even get to go on the delivery, Andrea. It was kind of, you
Oh
know,
my gosh.
I was excited for the boys to go, but I'll be honest with you, the next church they told me how amazing it was, and I was a little jealous that I
Yeah.
didn't. So here I was sitting on the couch, and we had just participated in this great event, and it was so neat. And you hear the stories of these kids and how grateful they were, and just to think that now, because of some of the sweat and sawdust that we created, these kids now have a place to sleep for however long, 10 years, right?
Yeah.
They're off the floor. It was such a neat experience.
Mhm.
But life comes back and you got to go back to what you were doing. I just felt myself going right back into that rut again. And it wasn't me. It just didn't feel me. And there I was a week previously just on cloud 9 serving need that I thought was very worthy my time.
Mhm.
And so I'm sitting on the couch going through this anguish in my head, right? Just what do I do? Get out of this, Luke, give myself pep talks that I'd done for many years.
Yeah.
And me and my kids were watching Big Bang Theory. That was our program we watched back then. And a commercial came on. And I remember it was Christmas time, right? It was first week of December. And I was just waiting for my kids to beg for this Xbox game that we saw on the commercial or whatever. And sure enough, that's what they did. And it was just the perfect moment, right? I'm struggling internally to try to find happiness for myself and be the guy I want to be for my family and for myself and just experienced this great opportunity to help these kids. And now my kids are complaining about the presents that they know I'm not going to buy them. At least they've got a bed. All of this really hit me in one single moment. And I remember thinking, I can sit here and tell my kids, talk to them, even show pictures or videos of service, but nothing does it more than when they experience it themselves.
Right.
And so I just got up off the couch, started walking to the garage, and my kids right in the middle of the program. My kids are like, "Dad, where are you going?" Right? I
Yeah.
said, "You know what? I've got some leftover wood. I'm going to build another bunk bed, and you're going to come and help me." And we had a great time those couple of days. I had pictures of my daughter in her pink tutu out there hammering away, and my son in his Boise State jersey drilling screws into wood. We just had a great time building beds. But the funny thing is I didn't do it because I knew another child was on the floor. I did it because I wanted my kids to feel the joy of service, right?
Mhm.
Well as appreciate the things that they had, like a freaking bed. So
My kids have freaking beds, and they won't even use their freaking beds. They wanna sleep in my room.
oh yeah. Well, yeah, we'll talk about that in a minute. But exactly, right? These kids day in and day out would be sleeping on the floor had they not had their own beds. And so I just wanted them to have the feel the joy of service and appreciate the things they had. Now I had this completed bunk bed and I
Luke,
had
this is like every parent's struggle though. Like every I shouldn't say every, but that is a big struggle with parenting, right? Like we want them to appreciate what they have. You have to understand their reality, right? And their perspective that they're taking on and why. They're just living in a very different world. They have no idea what it
right.
takes to get the things that they have. And it's no fault to theirs when they're a little child, but still, as an adult, it's frustrating sometimes. It's like, you have no idea how good you have it.
Well, and as a parent, exactly. And as a parent, what do you do with that? What do you do about that? I think the adult parent responsibility is to help them and teach them, teach them that. Teach them that, hey, you should appreciate the things that you have. Yeah, we're very, very blessed. You're blessed because you have a bed. Some
Yeah.
kids don't. And that was all going through my mind when we built that second bed, and I wanted them to feel the joy that I always felt serving someone. I always say, if you want true joy, you got to stop looking at yourself and see how you can help someone else.
Yeah.
And it's not like your problems are going to disappear. Of course not,
No.
but they're gonna feel far less heavy, when you realize that, you know what, there's a lot of problems in the world, and most of those problems you don't have to deal with, which is you should be very grateful for. And I wanted my kids to feel that way, right? And we had a great time, but then I had this bunk bed I had no idea what to do with. I was like, "So what do I do?" And I remember my wife at the time said, "Well, why don't you put it on Facebook, one of the buy, sell, trade groups?" And I was like, "You want me to put a free bed on buy, sell, trade? That's your plan. Okay."
Yeah.
I knew every Tom, Dick, and Harry that's gonna want a free bed is gonna be hounding me. And the funny thing happened, even though we got a little bit of that, there's 2 things that really was eye-opening when I posted that. And keep in mind, I'd never built furniture before in my life, right? I had built the one bunk bed with the Boy Scouts. So this one I kind of tweaked it a little bit. So I was a little more proud of it because I think I built it a little bit better.
Yeah.
But
2.0.
still, yeah, exactly. I just said, "Hey, this is a family Christmas project. Me and my kids built this bed for a child. So if anybody knows of a child in need, please let me know." Well, I had friends that I hadn't talked to for 20 years. I had people I'd never met before send messages to me about kids that they knew and the conditions that they were sleeping in, and it blew my mind.
Mm,
Not just the conditions, but the number of kids. I mean,
yeah.
I only knew the one family,
Yeah.
and I live in a small town, and there's a little bigger town next to us, but it was only about 50,000 people combined, and I was getting messages from all sorts of people and these circumstances that these kids are sleeping in, sleeping on pallets, sleeping on cement floors, sleeping with brother and sister or mom and dad day in and day out. It just they didn't have a bed of their own.
Some of
And
them want to be there. I can attest to that.
oh, and what's funny is I met a gal who said that her son slept with her for many nights, like a year or two, and it developed a pretty unhealthy bond between the mom and the son, right?
Interesting.
And so, anyways, that's a whole nother story. But kids, the parents weren't sleeping well. The kids don't sleep well. It's just a rough situation that these kids were in. And there was a ton of them. Right. And I didn't realize it was that bad in my own hometown. So now what do you do? I was trying to find this family, because it was a unique bed. It was the bed that me and my kids built. And I wanted it to go to a really special family. And I had a friend of mine about 30 minutes away in a town called me up and she said, "Luke, I've got the perfect situation for you." And this is my Haley story. So Haley was a 6-year-old girl that has never slept on a bed. She slept in the back seat of her mom's car. They were homeless. And my friend helped them get their first house. And that's when I met Haley delivering her first bed. Now she didn't know why we were there, but when I walked into the house, Andrea, I'll tell you what, there was nothing in the house. Nothing. There was no couch, TV, table, nothing. There was one of those milk crates, right? That
Mhm.
a hot plate sitting on it with a can of soup. That was the only thing in the house. But little Haley, and I should say, I'd helped with homelessness before, transitioning homelessness, poverty, but I never really looked at it through the eyes of a 6-year-old.
Mm.
And that was shocking to me. And then to see how excited Haley was even more of a shock because of the conditions she lived in. But she finally had a house. I mean, she'd never had one before, right?
I am sure all of that was such a pivotal moment in her life.
Boy, I think so. I'd hope so. And when we deliver beds to kids, we want to make sure 2 things: that they understand that this is your bed. It's not your parents' bed. It's not your brothers and sisters, right? It's your bed, number 1. And number 2, this was built by people you don't even know, but they love you. And they love you so much they built a bed for you. I want those kids to know that. And Haley was no different. When she took us back to her room, I mean, you can imagine what it looked like. There was holes in the carpet and tears in the wallpaper. The closet didn't have a door. There's used toys and stuff like that I'm sure people gave to her. But the most shocking thing was when I looked over in the corner, there was a stack of clothes there, and that was Haley's little nest. That was what she slept on. She'd come home from school, she'd take her school clothes off, put her PJs on, sleep on her school clothes, and then put them back on and go to school the next day. And it was so shocking to me. I was actually kind of pissed off at first, forgive me. I was really mad when I first saw that.
Yeah.
Um, I thought it was like, my gosh, this is going on under my own nose in my own town. How
Yeah.
And then that quickly changed to excitement because we had a bed for. We start bringing in pieces of the bed and putting it together. And I was watching her. Once she realized what it was that we were putting together in her room, she just erupted. I mean, she hugged these two strange guys in her room, right? And then went and hugged the bed. She even kissed the bed, which was pretty shocking.
Aw. I feel like anger sometimes is just that catalyst, though, that we need, right? We get so angry about something that we decide, "Okay, I'm gonna make some change."
Emotion, that's what it is, right?
Yeah.
Emotions, they can drive us to do some crazy, awesome, horrible, wonderful, terrible things. And
Yeah.
and in this case, I almost felt all of them. I felt happy, I felt sad, I felt angry, all about the situation. Here's this little 6-year-old girl who's in this situation not because of her choices, right? And quite frankly, not necessarily because of the mom's choices. It's just a bad situation. And we help hundreds of thousands of families that are in these same situations, whether it's a domestic violence. I mean, sometimes these
Yeah.
women, they have 10 minutes to grab as much crap as they can out of their house and leave. And it's really sad. Or you got grandparents that should be enjoying their golden years are now raising kids because the parents aren't in the picture anymore. It's
Yeah.
just really sad. And Haley, I thought I was there just for Haley. And of course, we're there to help her get a bed. But when I looked up at Haley's mom, and I was raised by a single mom. So when I saw these tears just pouring down this lady's face, I knew what each one of those tears meant, right? I knew the struggle that she had. That I remember hearing my mom cry because there was one year we weren't going to have any Christmas presents because she couldn't afford it. She was working 3 jobs with 5 kids. I mean, what is she supposed to do, right?
Yeah.
And here's mom almost like, relief. You can see the relief in her face that, her child's now being taken care of as far as a bed goes, that she's safe, she's secure now, she's off the floor. And that, I mean, if that wasn't seeing Haley excited about her bed, if that wasn't enough to melt your heart, when I saw the mom, I lost it. I mean, and I'm supposed to be this big, tough farm kid. And it was so overwhelming. Me and my buddy had about a half-hour drive home. We really didn't say much to each other because it was just, I mean, it was so powerful and so humbling and all at the same time. But I remember thinking, I'm a farm kid from Idaho. I love hunting. I love fishing. I love outdoors, four-wheeling. I love college football on Saturdays. I just loved all that. In just an instant, all of that changed. It didn't matter to me anymore. I didn't care about it near as much as the few hours each night that my kids and I spent building that bed to solve that problem. Yeah, that was well worth my time. And so we got back. I told my buddy, I said, no kid's going to sleep on the floor in my town if I have anything to do with it.
I
You
love
know?
that.
Yeah. And that's actually our mission statement. No kid sleeps on the floor in our, and we hold that mission statement true because we want to help any kid ages 3 to 17 that doesn't have a bed. And since then, we have now grown to actually the world's largest bed building charity with over 400 plus chapters in 4 countries. And we've built over 370,000 beds.
Wow. That's a lot of beds.
A lot of beds, which, sad. It's a lot of kids. Actually, I tell people as you and I speak right now, there's a good, well over 160,000 kids waiting for beds right now.
So how do you come across people that need beds? Are you just spreading the word for your company and then people find out about you and go and apply to get a bed?
Great question. We work with a lot of agencies that work with
Okay.
child transitions, but honestly, most of what people hear about us usually are friends and families of families that we've helped. They might see our trucks, they might see us on the news. A lot of times in certain chapters, well, in certain areas where there might be a news story or they hear a podcast, then people can apply. And really, it's very simple. They go to shpbeds.org, which is our website, and it actually brings up the closest chapter to where that person, is on their computer. And you see what's going on in that chapter. You see how many bed applications they have, how many beds they've delivered. But most of the time, that's how people hear about us. And really, we being the largest in the world and being able to service over 90,000 kids last year, that's how many beds we built. We still only cover about 27% of the United States, which is really sad.
Yeah. Where do you get the money to pay for the lumber?
So remember, this started out as just a family Christmas project. This wasn't going to be anything. Like, I not that I didn't like charities, I just didn't. I guess I just was always nervous, like everybody. Where does my money go when I donate? And if I'm going to spend time or donate materials, I want to make sure it goes to help the kids in my own hometown. So when we decided to be a charity, mostly because we couldn't finance it ourselves anymore, well, I wanted to make sure that the dollar that you donate to whatever chapter of ours you donate to, 90% of that dollar stays there. And all of the beds stay in that same community because this is a community problem that needs to be solved by the community. And the way we fund it is very simple. It's very transparent. I'm a farm kid from Idaho, so I need to make this as simple as possible, Andrea, because I had a full-time job. I didn't have time to manage all this. And so what I found is there's a lot of organizations, companies out there that are looking for ways to give back to their community,
Mhm,
but also to find team building exercises for their employees or company events that they can bond together. Well, what we do is we require about a $300 donation for every bed that whoever is sponsoring wants to build. So if someone wants to build 20 beds, we need a $6,000 donation.
mhm,
That's the first thing. The second thing is then we ask their employees or the community to come in and we teach the community how to use tools and they build the beds. We build them in kind of like an assembly line, right? So
mhm.
start the day out 9 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday. We'll have two, three, four bunks of wood that show up, usually from our sponsor Lowe's, and then we grab the community and we have set of tools that we bring and we put them in kind of like an assembly line. So there's stations and we put people at stations and then they build the beds.
That's
And so,
awesome.
oh, dude, it's so much fun. So you get this like camaraderie, this team building feel where you're waiting on someone while someone's waiting on you as you pass wood back and forth. And the beauty of it is you touch every single piece of wood that comes through there that eventually is going to be a bed for a child. Not a lot of organizations do you have that much hands on
Mhm,
to the actual product, if you will, that supports the mission. And so a build day it's a different feel than delivering the bed to the child,
mhm.
but it's a fun feel. It's a fun activity that what you're doing is building beds for kids that don't have any. It just brings a level of satisfaction and fulfillment. It's hard to find in other activities.
Yeah. For a farm boy, you really thought this through.
Well, I'm a little bit of an entrepreneur. I've started and stopped many other companies and I run a couple other companies as well. And I actually do a lot of nonprofit training now because I think some of the biggest misnomers that people have about charities is they're still a company, they're still an organization. And the only difference between a for profit company and a nonprofit company is nonprofits don't pay taxes. That's really the only difference. Really, honestly, nonprofit companies, they still have overhead, they still have
Yeah.
expenses and things of that nature. And that's why the I wanted to be very transparent, certainly when it comes to finances. When you donate a dollar to SHP to whatever chapter you desire, we only take 10%. That's it. It's like a tithe, right? We take
Mhm.
10% and we manage the whole organization off of that 10%. And I'll be honest with you, it's hard. Sometimes it's not enough. And when it's not enough, you just have to go without. But we feel it's very important that every dollar that we get is sacred and we stretch that dollar as far as we can. And because of that, people have recognized the value, the importance of what we do. And more importantly, well, I should say more importantly, but equally important really, is they understand that this is a community problem and it needs to be solved by the community
Mhm.
with community funds,
Yeah.
and because of that, we've been able to grow super fast and been able to reach in areas that I could have never dreamed of being.
Yeah. It's definitely incredible work that you're doing. I love how you're doing that with companies as well, because companies are often, like you're saying, they're looking for something to do. They're looking for team building activities and they're looking for charities to donate to. And there's a lot of options out there, but yours obviously encompasses a lot of different things all in one. And that's really awesome. I love that.
I always found this is kind of funny. I always found, you go to a company and they usually get the HR. It's usually some poor lady that they lace with this task of, hey, we've got the company barbecue coming up. We need to find a activity to have all the families participate in. If you can make it a charity, great. If you can make it fun, great. If you can make it where 10 people or 200 people show up, great. Well, there's not a lot of charities that can do that,
Yeah.
and we're lucky enough to do that. And we do it in a way that it's very simple for this poor HR lady to try to put together, because we're mobile, right? So really all we require is tell me what your budget is, tell me how many volunteers, and tell me where you want to do it. That's it. We take care of everything else. We
So
organize
anywhere,
any
anywhere.
yeah, anywhere. We've built in the bottom of the Venetian in Las Vegas, in the basement of the Venetian. We've built on football fields. We build in Lowe's parking lots. We build anywhere. We're mobile. Some of our chapters have warehouses that people go to, but for the most part, it's the experience for the volunteer. And I learned this, if I can share my Hank story.
Sure.
I learned this a long time ago. We had just got this old building. We not donated to us, but we got to use it for free from a very sweet couple. But they were, I mean, this building was garbage. I mean, it didn't even have a bathroom, and it was rough. Let's just say that. No heat, cinder block walls, and this was January 17th, if I recall, in Idaho, which is not a very warm place in January. And I was having my first public build, right? So I was going to have people from the public show up. You can build beds with me, this crazy farm kid. And I put it in the newspaper. Well, I didn't think I was going to get a lot of people other than my friends that I begged to show up. But we had quite a few people show up. And I remember this old guy, man, he had to have been 200 years old. This guy named Hank walks in. And I mean, my first thought was, oh my gosh, this guy's going to die on me. I mean, he was old. I'll just say and I love him to death. And what was unique about Hank, he just had this grace
Sorry,
of
I'm just thinking like horrible jokes right now. Are we building you a coffin? Or I'm not even putting this stuff.
seriously, seriously, and I looked at and smiled at you, and you just instantly think of grandpa. I mean, he's just had that grandpa smile, but he was doing something really interesting. Before we all started, he had these cards and they said, "Thank you for your service," or something like that. It said, "Thank you" on it. And he was handing them to the volunteers. So clearly, this guy had volunteered time before. I mean, this wasn't his first rodeo. And I remember he kind of came up to me and he's like, "So you're the guy in charge?" And I was like, "Sure. What?" And he says, "Well, where do you need me?" And I mean, there's a lot of thoughts going through my head. I need you to go home. I need take a
I
nap.
need
Is what
you
I
to
need you to
not
do.
have a heart attack today.
Yeah, I need you to stay alive here. And I said, "Well, what did you do for a living, Hank?" And he says, "Well, I was a carpenter for 40 years." And I'm like, "Oh
Right.
yeah, okay. I know exactly where to put you. Because if there's one station that you can't screw up is cutting the wood. You got to make sure you cut right." And so I put him but the bad thing about the cut station, it's right at the very, very beginning. So it's the furthest away from the fire. It's the furthest away from everybody else. It's like the cold part of town, right? I put him back in the saw and showed him how to do it, and then the build started. Well, as a chapter president, you got to keep in mind most of these people had never built a bed before, and it was my first public build, so none of them been to one of our builds before. So as the only guy that really knew how to do this, I was running around for 4 hours straight, going from one fire to the
Yeah.
next, teaching people this that. Well, I forgot about Hank. And I was like, when it dawned on me, I'm like, "Oh my gosh, is Hank still alive?" I mean, I was like legitimately worried about him. So I run back to the cut station and there was Hank covered in sawdust. I mean, he was as white as his hair. And I said, "Hank, I am so sorry, man. Are you okay?" And he looked at me and there's sawdust in his eyelashes. I mean,
My
he was covered. And he says, Luke, he's like, I've helped out in a lot of charities. I've helped out a lot of service projects. He says, never have I shown up to a service day, and in 5 minutes was put on a project or put on an assignment, and I couldn't leave for 4 hours. I couldn't go to the bathroom. I couldn't do anything other than my assignment. And my first thought was, I am so sorry. I mean, and I looked at him like, Hank, I'm sorry, man. And he's like, no, 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 no. He said, thank you. And I like stepped back. It was like it took my breath away. I'm like, thank you. I mean, I'm sitting there thinking, you should be ticked off right now.
Hank was wearing a diaper, he was fine.
Yeah, he was probably was. And he said, no, he says, Luke, he says, I came here to work and you put me to work. And right then I learned, and we have a saying in SHP where the happiest volunteer is the sweatiest and the dustiest. And that's
Yep.
because when people want to volunteer, they want to feel like they made a difference. They want to feel like their efforts were worth the time.
Well,
And
that's what they're doing with their day. Our
oh,
time is precious, so if you take time out of your day to go do something like that, and then you go home and like, "What did I even help with today?"
exactly. And Andrea, I'll tell you, this is some of the biggest problems that nonprofits have nowadays is they don't appreciate the hard work that they go through. It fulfills them, but they try to make it easy for the volunteers, right?
Mhm.
And I mean, there's some weight to that scale, but for the most part, volunteers, when you want to donate your time, especially on a Saturday morning, right, where you could be doing other things, you want to feel like you made a difference. And making the efforts light isn't necessarily the right answer. These people want to feel like they participated. And that's why it's very
They
important.
wanna be worked.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And when you build beds with sleep out in peace, there's such thing as post build body. I mean, even for I wouldn't say I'm a young whippersnapper anymore. 48's not young, but uh, well, compared to Hank, it is. But
Yeah.
you feel like you worked, and that I think is where the reason why most people say they come out of a build day feeling more fulfilled than they've ever felt in any other service projects because it is hard work and it's going to a cause that not a lot of people know even exists. And it brings a level of fulfillment that is almost unmatched by others.
So, how do people sign up for all of this? They just go on the website? Is that how people get involved? Like, to
That's right.
be a volunteer?
That's right. So, like I said earlier, when you go to shpbeds.org, it's going to come up to the closest chapter. Their chapter page is going to come up. And there's a
But
couple of things.
what if there's not a chapter?
Aha, great question. So when it comes up, and let's say there is a chapter close by, right? So a couple of things you can do. First of all, we're a charity. We would love your donation, right? Of course, it goes 90% of it goes to that chapter. It goes directly to kids building beds and delivering beds for kids. We don't have anybody that's paid on the chapter level. Those are all volunteers. So that 90 cents, it's actually greater than that, but it goes to help those kids out directly in your own community.
Mhm.
So you can donate. You can bring twin size sheets. That's the size of bed that we build, whether it's in Hawaii, Alaska, or Miami or Bermuda. It's the same bed, twin size bed. So you can donate sheets and pillows and, because we supply the whole bed. Then you can contact the local chapter and become a core team member or find out when their next build is and go to a next build. Trust me, they would love to have you. Then, like what you said, if there's not a chapter close by you, and this is something that really strikes close to your heart and you want to be a part of, you can start a chapter. We've made it extremely easy to start a chapter. We tell chapter presidents the only thing you really focus in on is raising money, building beds, and delivering beds to kids. Those are the three things you focus on. All the other big minutia of running an organization, we take on. That's part of that 10% that we pay for. We take on all that. We have all the insurances and all the softwares, and we keep all that running for our chapter presidents. We just want them to focus in on raising money, building, and delivering beds. We fly you out to Salt Lake City so you can do a weekend training and go through that and learn all the ins and outs of how to run a successful chapter of SHP. And then by the time you get home, you are hitting the ground running. And the beauty of it nowadays is there's so many chapters around. There's a good chance there's a chapter within a couple of hours from you. You can go and experience a delivery or a build by yourself. I challenge you. Go into those, ask your chapter president to go on a delivery. See for yourself what these kids are sleeping in, what these conditions are, and it'll change your soul, I promise you.
Yeah. How far out is each chapter from one another?
We have some chapters that are only 15, 20 minutes away from each other. It really depends on population. Like Houston, we have, I don't know, 4 chapters are all within half hour each other. And then in Idaho, we have a chapter, and the next closest chapter might be 3 hours away.
Oh,
It's really based on population. My own hometown, I'll kind of give you an example. Twin Falls, Idaho, and what's called the Magic Valley, that's where we cover, is only about 80,000 people. But we've delivered almost 2,000 beds in the last 10 years, and we still get an application about every other day.
wow. What state, I'm curious, what state has the highest demand?
Oh, that's a great question. I could actually tell you, but you got to keep in mind, we still only are known by about 27%. I would say our largest chapter when it comes to how many beds are built is our Phoenix chapter. And this is a great example. We have one chapter in Phoenix, but Phoenix is what, 3 or 4 million people? And we
Mhm.
have one chapter, but those guys out there, they build about 3,000 beds a year.
Wow.
Yeah, they build, in fact, they just passed their 10,000th bed because they've been around now for, ooh, my gosh, 6 or 7 years, and they're getting up to now building 2,500 to 3,000 beds a year when they only started out building only a couple of hundred a year. But those guys now, they have builds every week, sometimes 2 times a week. They deliver all those beds, hundreds of beds a month. I mean, it is an impressive, machine that they have out there. And I think on their waiting list, it's been a while since I looked, but it was close to 5,000 kids.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's sad.
And Andrea, that's why I'm so grateful to have you for you to have me on your show because this is a huge problem in our country. Child bedlessness is a huge problem that no one knows about. I guarantee you, most of your listeners.
What is this episode?
Yeah, yeah, they made me question it, and I'm saying, go talk to your school's counselors, go talk to your first responders. You're gonna find that child bedlessness is a real thing, and you can be a part of the solution, even if it's just doing the simple share this podcast with someone, share, your knowledge of what you found out about sleep and heavenly peace and how child bedlessness is a real thing. That's the only way we're gonna solve this together is letting people know and giving them the chance to be involved.
Yeah, this obviously is not my usual for the podcast per se, but, I was telling you, your messages, I could tell were just so heartfelt, and clearly this is a problem, and I've known it was a problem because I've seen some posts where people were asking for beds for their children, but definitely not to this degree. I was not aware of that at all. Like, I knew it existed on a small scale in my mind. I had no idea it was such a huge problem, but my podcast is definitely all about bringing hope and inspiring people to live out their life in the most fulfilled way, and I think joining one of your chapters would be helpful for people that are trying to find fulfillment in their lives, but also for people listening that maybe need a bed for their child. This is an option.
And even if you just know someone, right? So you can go to our website and you can apply for a bed for yourself, for your own child, for your neighbor, let's say, or maybe you know someone 3 states over, right? If you know someone that as a child sleeping on the floor that does not have a bed, then you can go to our website, you can fill out an application based on the zip code of where the child lives. If we have a chapter that has accepted that area, that zip code as a deliverable area, then the chapter president will get that application. And it's not a first come, first serve. It is a
Mhm.
by need situation. I'll give you an example. We have a lot of these where I delivered beds to this couple. Mom and dad were out of the picture. The grandparents lived back east somewhere, so they weren't an option. And these 2 kids, the only 2 people they knew in their life now were each other, 6 and 7 years old. They went into the foster care program, and this family were taking them on, but they only had 1 bed, and the judge gave the family 24 hours to get a bed, or else they had to split these 2 kids up. I mean, can you imagine for these 2 kids? And so we had a bed in that house 12 hours later, and that's what I talk about. It's way more than just a bed, right? It's more than
Yeah.
night's sleep. These kids, they physically, they wake up tired, they wake up sore, and they go to school in no condition to learn, at least not as equipped and ready as other students.
Mhm.
Then on a social front, they don't have sleepovers. They don't have kids come to their home because they're embarrassed. They don't have a place for, like you and I, when we have a tough day and have a hard day and it's stressful, where do we go to relax? Where do we go to escape? We crawl into the best place we love, which is our bed. These kids don't have that.
Yeah.
They have bad days too. I had a friend of mine say it's funny you call it your SHP. Sleeping on the Peace, his acronym is SHP. He said because me and my sister grew up in a really hard home. Right, my parents fought a lot, and we'd always go to our secret hiding place, our
Aw.
and it was their bed. They called it their bed. I get shivers when I think about it because that is how valuable. I mean, when you really start to think about how much you enjoy and love your bed and what it means to you. I mean, I do a lot of traveling, right? And I'm sorry, there's nothing like my own bed when you come home from sleeping in hotel rooms for, a week on end. It's just, it's your bed, right? It's your sanctuary. And these kids don't have that.
Yeah,
Uh, it's a big deal.
it is. Thank you so much for sharing all this. This is very valuable in a lot of different ways. I really do appreciate your message and your journey for how you got here. It's a beautiful story.
Oh, wow. Thank you for having me on. And your listeners out there, help us out, right?
Thank
Share this podcast. It's an amazing podcast. You do such a great job, by the way.
thank you.
And share what you learned today. We can solve this together. I'm on social media. Follow me. I share almost everyday stories of what's going on out there so people can appreciate, where they're donating their time or money, but also help raise awareness. That's my main job is raise awareness about this problem and have people realize, child bedlessness, no one knows how big the problem is. The only national statistics we have are what Sleep and Emily Peace will put together. And we're no statisticians, but we know it's greater than 3% of the total population. So if you're in a town right now, do the math of 100,000 people, there are 3,000 kids in your town that are sleeping on the floor.
Mm, yeah, that's more than we want.
Yes.
More than it should be. That is yeah, it's heartbreaking when you think about it, but I'm gonna have to get out there and build a bed now. I'm actually handier than I look, let me say.
Well, we got a great chapter in Dallas. Drive down to Dallas and jump in a bed build. You'll love it, I promise.
Like, "Woohoo! No, I can do it, no problem." I will not perform like Hank, that's for sure. I will not operate any cutting business because I will lose a finger, but
Well, we've made it. Trust me, I had to make it foolproof for 12-year-old scouts. So anybody can do this. No experience is required. We
yeah.
make it pretty simple. So
I'm like, "Put me with the kids."
we'll have you put washers on screws. How about that?
Perfect. Where can people connect with you if they wanna connect with you, or where should they go if they have questions? Just look for their local chapter?
Yeah, if you want to help out locally, obviously go to shpbeds.org. You can contact me. My email is luke.mickelson@shpbeds.org. You can email me. You can find me on all the social media fronts. Just either type SHP Luke or Luke Mickelson. You'll find me. Be happy to connect. If you have any questions? I mean, I want to make sure people really understand the problem and then understand that there is a solution and you can be a part of the solution in your own hometown
Yeah,
and make a big difference in these kids' lives.
yeah. I love that. Well, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you.